You unmuted.
Hel- Hello?
Yeah, I can hear you now.
Sweet. I don't know. I was just on YouTube and I saw you were live, so I wanted to jump in on this. Are
Awesome.
you
How long
still
have you
on the
been
same
tuning in?
topic?
Yeah.
Never tuned in. Actually, you were just on my For You.
Yeah, no, the topic is generally going to remain about anyone who thinks that they can justify killing and eating animals for food. So, yeah.
Okay. I'd like to hear your position.
Okay. So yeah, there's always two ways that this could go down, right? Because with name the trait, that's the consistency test. It's not an argument. I could turn it into an argument to make the case, or I can, technically speaking, right? One goes more of a discussion format, the other goes more of a debate format. So in the
Cool.
discussion format, it's a lot more open, right? And it's just like, you know, I'll give you name the trait, so on and so forth. Um, but yeah, I mean, are you here more so for a debate or a discussion?
Um, I guess we can start off with the discussion
Absolutely.
because I'd like to share with you and the viewers why I believe it's justified to consume meat. But I
Absolutely.
definitely want to know the host's perception first.
For
So let's
sure.
start off with the discussion.
Yeah, for sure. And so, okay, there is a consistency test. Again, it's not an argument. There's an important distinction
Sure.
there. But I'll just give you the consistency test. It's called name the trait. Have you ever heard of it before?
Actually, no.
Okay. So it is a point that says it asks people what trait is true of an animal, which if true of a human, would cause you to kill and eat the human as you do the animal. Okay, so if you said the trait was intelligence, for example, the follow up question is off of the logical consequences entailed by that view would be: would you be okay with eating mentally handicapped people? If you said it was species, would you be okay with eating Superman? If you said it was both, would you be okay with eating mentally handicapped Superman? So on and so forth. Technically speaking, I'll give you a crash course. Just a few words. All
Sure.
traits that somebody would give are reducible to to just a few things. So for example, if you let's say you name the trait social contract, right? I'm going to
Sure.
remind you kindly that like the difference or someone who is severely mentally handicapped automatically lacks the ability to contain a social contract. Earlier in the stream, I showed somebody, a human that was mentally severely handicapped. Her name was Bree, and she obviously she's got the sentience level and intelligence of about a, or had, she's unfortunately not here anymore, she passed away, but she had the sentience level and intelligence of a fish. So she's not able to form a social contract. You know, basically the traits that are technically differential between humans and animals are only reducible to a few. But anything that you may think is significant or offers nuance, I'm happy to help you realize the absurdity within the logical consequences of said view, and hopefully, you'd end up being logically consistent and on absurd by agreeing to the philosophy of veganism.
Sure. Hey, this is your platform. I'll play by the rules. I'll start off by sharing just one glaring aspect.
Sure.
I have never experienced what it's like to be vegan, vegetarian, or any sort of specialized diet, based off of belief or just, how people want to consume nutrients. What I will tell you is I also don't agree in carnivory. I don't think that's a equally natural aspect of what it is to be a human. I am a very big supporter of omnivory. I believe that that's what our, systems are designed for. So if it's still okay to tread with that in mind, that's my position.
Well, I'm just going to try to dissect what you said specifically to make sure I
Sure.
understood it. So, what I heard in there is something about like choosing of diets or something like that. So it sounded like there was something about like people having the liberty to choose what they want to eat, if I'm not mistaken.
That's definitely true. Yes.
Okay, so that you it would be fair to say that that's like one trait that makes it acceptable to kill uh,
Um, I
animals and not
don't
humans.
think I don't know if there's a direct correlation. Of course, there is
Okay.
just the fact of the matter that if you're going to consume something, you have options: meat, uh, plant material, fungal matter. Um, some places have used stone for flavorants, or just as another way to consume.
Sure,
In Japan, they're
descriptively, but just to be
sure.
clear, but just to be clear here, what do you go by, G?
You could call me G. This is just a burner account because I don't
Oh,
use consistent devices.
okay, gotcha. So G,
Don't save my log.
the only questions I'm going to ask you are the morally relevant ones between humans and
Okay.
animals, such that it's okay to kill the animals, and not the humans. So, if it sounds like the answer is no, that the liberty to choose what you want to eat is not a trait that justifies it in the animal context, not the humans. Is that right?
Um, Interesting. So we're focusing on animals for now. When it comes to animals, of
Well, no,
course,
sorry to
their
be very. I don't
dietary.
mean to cut you off, but I just want to be clear. We're focusing
Sure.
on humans, and then we're running through something called the trait equalization process, and asking if this trait is actually true, like you say it is, of what serves as the morally differentiating factor for where moral value is lost. If we were to insert this trait for a human, then it would be the case that the reductio or the logical consequences that I'm giving, what you would have to sign off on that being true as well. So we're actually starting from
Okay.
humans, taking whatever trait you think is true of animals and plugging it into the human context to see if that's what you
Sure.
are holding up to consistently.
Let's start with opportunism. I believe that animals, like humans before and even now, have always just picked what they're going to consume based off of opportunity. And in time, we've developed specific diets. Of course, birds thrive off of seeds and nuts, plant matter, and some birds are carnivorous. We have just straight on carnivory with lions and tigers. And then we have omnivores as well. Omnivores, they could be, for a lack of a better term, bugs, right? Some bugs eat meat, some bugs eat plant at the same time. I'm sure
Mm-hmm.
there's larger animals that I'm blanking on now. How do you feel about this?
How do I feel that descriptively larger
Opportunistic
beings, yeah, like
consumption.
that beings eat other beings or have historically?
No, the I'm plugging in the factor of opportunistic consumption. Both humans and animals can morally consume based off of opportunity, right? If you don't have accessible means of food, the only option is to consume what you can.
Wait, so a
Otherwise, the
couple things.
consequence.
So G, so a
Sure.
couple things. So yeah, first off, if it's not it has to be a trait. It can't be a trait that's shared between the two beings. And you just said that it was, right? So if it's
Okay.
not something that's only true of the animal that causes you to have a differentiating attitude towards it, such that it's okay to kill and eat them, then it's not going to be the case that it's relevant, right? So if you said like humans and animals view X opportunistically, it's not it doesn't plug in because I'm trying to find out what is true of an animal that if it were true of a human, right? So if you said that like your average animal is like severely mentally handicapped and or equivalent to a human, that is, and that's true, um, then and you plug that in and said if that was true of people, then I would be okay with eating them, then that would be an
Hmm.
example of you being consistent and also not engaging with what's called category error, where you name something that's true of both. I'm looking for something that's not true of both, at least as a standard example, such that it serves as the reason why you kill and eat the one and not the other.
Okay. So your position confuses me a little bit. I will need a little bit more clarification.
Mm-hmm.
What you're asking is, what is an animal applicable trait?
So humans have not. I'll just ambiguate it. So humans have a set of traits true of them. Do you know what I mean by that?
Which are?
Well, what typically makes up a human. Their human
Which
DNA,
would
their
be?
average intelligence, everything you know of what your
Okay.
average human to be, right? Can we agree?
So that would be a lot, right? We
Mm-hmm.
have genetics, we have backgrounds, we
Sure, but you
have
generally understand.
evolution.
But you generally understand what that means, right? Like a trait is a characteristic or a thing true of that being, right? So if I said humans have a set of traits true of them, you understand what that means, right?
Such as,
That's not a yes or no, but I gave some examples. I said like human DNA. You said you said genetics, which is just a rehash, but you understand what
sure.
I mean, right? Yeah. Okay.
I
And then
I understand the framing. I don't understand your criteria because it can be
right.
rather
That's
expansive.
that's where
Do
I'm
you
going
have
with it.
criteria?
Well, whatever comes to mind when you have a concept of a human, which presumably is
Sure.
going to be something like their human DNA, their the average intelligence level. Like when I think of a human, I
Right.
think of
For
intelligence.
clarification,
Mhm.
because that one seems to be a strong point, uh, use the example of intelligence, just so I can understand where exactly it is that you're
Sure,
you're
sure. Well,
pointing
let
at.
me just finish the thought process entirely because I'm just giving an example
Yeah.
right now, and I'll finish. So, if we
Sure.
understand that obviously, like humans have a set of traits true of them, your average person does, and your average animal that people consume, cows, chickens, and pigs, have traits true of them, and that means something
Okay.
like lower than average intelligence as opposed to a human. That means something like having hooves, having a cow tail, having a pigtail, whatever's true of the beings in question, um, so on and so forth.
How does that relate to intelligence?
So and so
Please.
now that I finished that, so just let me finish. So now that I finished that part, if we understand one set of beings has a set of traits true of them, the humans, and the other set of beings, the animals, have a set of traits true of them. Name the
Sure.
trait is asking what point in where is moral value lost? So at what point where what thing is true of an animal which if it were true of a human would cause you to say that the human would lose value if it had that trait or set of traits true of them as well. So if you name the trait having a cow tail and hooves, if that was true of a human as well, and then in order to be logically consistent, you'd have to say that every human who had cow tails and hooves were okay to kill and eat for
Consume.
food.
Yeah, no, I understand now. I guess the biggest confusion there is why we would even be correlating that. I mean, from my point of view, we'd never consume a human being. From what you're describing
That's
is
exactly
what
why. So
factor,
yeah, so
why would we
I'm
consume
glad
an
to
animal?
yeah, so that's exactly why. So because logic asserts that if there are differential traits that separate humans and animals, and you have as a carnist a differing attitude that causes you to eat one and not the other, there has to be some justification, which is just to say some trait or set of traits that morally differentiate the two, such that you find it acceptable to eat the one and not the other. Or what's more than likely is that you're technically logically consistent because you've not thought about this view before. That's mostly the case with almost all carnists. They really just don't realize the logical consequences of their view. And if they actually tried to plug in a trait or set of traits, they would quickly realize that it doesn't hold. And similar to what happened with regards to blacks during slavery, Jews, during World War II, women who got domestically abused, so on and so forth, would realize that it wasn't really that people thought that, human rights didn't extend to these other groups. It's just that we weren't consistently applying our values, and it wasn't until somebody pointed out the philosophy in question and dismantled the confusion therein that there was, there was a problem with it. So that's why we're
Sure.
making the comparison to show that you have absurd logical consequences if you attempt to justify the view, but you ought to be logically consistent and not absurd by choosing veganism.
Sure. Okay. So I kind of get what you're at, right?
Mm-hmm.
I definitely think that a factor would be, you know, perceptionally agency, right? Moral agency. I'm not a big believer in morality as a law of reality as more as it is a human construct. So that can
Absolutely, I'm
have
a
its own
subjectivist.
fallacy. Sure, it's just fluid, right? It can be manipulated. But moral agency, right? The ability to just kind of decide whether something or not is applicable to the case. For example, morally, we don't eat cats and dogs in the US, but that's different in other places, such as with horses as well.
Mm-hmm.
And here we eat cows. That's not done in other places. So,
Descriptively.
moral agency.
But the challenge of name the trait is a prescriptive one. So it's not the case that anybody who doesn't eat cats or dogs or doesn't eat horses in some areas and not others, or what the strongest case is really doesn't eat humans that are trait equalized with whatever traits people think may be relevant. The real point is just to say that people aren't in realization of their inconsistencies. Descriptively, people don't eat cats and dogs or any of these other beings, and I don't think they would eat, for example, a human who, if they were blindfolded, were told, hey, this being has a reduction of intelligence or a change of a species that's, not technically human DNA, but they have a will to live, so on and so forth. If you took off the blindfold and found out it was a severely mentally handicapped person who just looked human but actually had the DNA of a cow, I don't think that person would kill them. But if they said that they still would just because they knew that it technically was not human, then that's what's called a shell morality position. So, the descriptives don't really matter. It's just on whether or not it's actually justified when we do think about it.
Hmm. Um, I guess, can I focus in on the term justification?
Sure.
So, to your point, when it comes to, what is justified in consumption, that's another ambiguous part. Again, another human construct. So,
Well,
I
just to be
guess
clear, we're
I
going to
would,
make this ultra simple because I am a firm believer of not being convoluted. And my mentor once taught me if you can't explain something on the level of a kindergartner, not to be condescending, but just to demonstrate how much understanding you ought to have of the position, then you don't understand it well enough. So to be ultra crystal clear, it's just this simple: the same exact thing, the same exact attitude you would have in the trade equalized human context. So
if
killing
you're trying to
humans.
explain it in simplistic forms, as simple as a kindergartner, I don't think a kindergartner could understand. What was that term you said? Simplistic to form or something? Can you reiterate that one more time?
So it's called hyperbole to say to a kindergartner. It's just to demonstrate
No,
that
I
you understand
understand that.
something
I
well
definitely
enough.
understand
Well, it sounded
hyperbole,
a little bit well. It definitely sounded a little bit like you were trying to take me seriously
but
there
your
when you said I don't think a
terminology can
kindergartner
be
would understand.
complex to the point where even just a young individual as myself might not fully understand exactly what you're saying
You
at the speed
don't.
that you're saying it.
What word? Okay, I could slow down if you want, but what word or words didn't you
Yes, please.
understand?
Right after you explain the simplicity of explaining to a
Okay,
kindergartner, you then use complex terminology.
okay. So if somebody wouldn't, if somebody would have an attitude against killing humans, whatever you would conceptualize that or think of that, right? You would think it's wrong, presumably, right, to kill humans,
Hmm.
right? If you can think, perceive, I doubt you've never heard of the word conceptualize before. If you could
No, I
conceptualize
have.
that, right? So if you conceptualize the idea that that is something you would not prefer, find wrong, not acceptable, synonymous would just be not justified, then point by analogy,
Sure.
that's all that's meant by not justified in the animal context. So it's just that simple.
Okay. I will admit to you, I'm not a educated individual in this term. I am a consumer of meat, and I
What
wanted
term?
to just your field, which is, it seems you have vast knowledge in this. I'll definitely be honest and say that I'm just a consumer of meat and plants, and I just wanted to come
This is
from
the
a
beauty, right? But this is the beauty of name the
yeah,
trait,
yeah.
right? Because if we're talking from your own view, right? So that's you already possess the attitude that it's wrong to kill humans, and you already possess the attitude that it's morally acceptable to kill animals for food. Then your position is it doesn't take any more thought than the realization of of what it means to kill a
I
being
guess
if you were to plug in certain traits. So you don't have to be
saying
well thought out
killing
on it as long
human
as you would have the intuition pump in the human context to say that intelligence
saying
or species
killing
wouldn't
a
justify it.
human is a very, very just wrong thing to agree with, and that's why
Wait,
you
what
can't
is a
just
wrong thing to agree with?
say killing humans. Now, what I'm
What do you
saying
mean it's a
is,
wrong thing to? You mean to say that you wouldn't agree with it regardless?
what I'm trying to say is, one cannot just say killing humans is okay, right? So you could never expect anyone to just admit that, correct?
What do you, No, I don't know what that means. What do you mean you can never admit that? You mean practically speaking, somebody wouldn't admit it if they thought it was okay?
Yes.
Okay, well that's a side point because I'm speaking under the conditional of if you thought it were okay. And side point, if you we're not even talking about actually, let me correct myself. We're not even talking about a version of you that would think it is okay. We're talking about the you that doesn't think it is okay to kill humans because you already signed that's your current position, right? That it's wrong to kill humans.
I definitely think that it's wrong to kill humans.
Okay. So if it's wrong to kill humans and that's your real position, then unless you have a view that differentiates with a trait or set of traits, something that justifies that context between humans and animals, I don't know what point you think is relevant to say that somebody, if they were somebody who would find it acceptable to kill humans, would find it acceptable to kill humans. We're not talking about that person. We're talking about the version of you that doesn't find it acceptable to kill humans. So to be consistent, you have to find it acceptable. You have to find it unacceptable to kill animals as well, unless it were the case that you can name some trait or set of traits that you think serve as a more relevant temperature breaker that don't cause you to succumb into absurdity.
How about just the energy production you can get from the consumption
The energy production you could get from the consumption? What?
of meat? Yes. When you consume meat, you gain energy because your system breaks it down. That's
Is
important, right?
that is that the trait you're naming that serves as a more relevant temperature breaker to kill the animal and not the human?
Yes.
First of all, that's not a differential trait because you can kill a human for energy. You understand that, right? There are people that
Not
cannibalize,
without
right?
consequence.
Wait. But you said
Yes.
the trait was just the consumption, the energy that you get from it. You didn't say that
Okay,
it
let's
was
use the
also
trait consequence.
consequences. Huh?
Let's focus on the trait consequence.
Well, is it consequence or consequence and consumption?
Allow me to reiterate. Let's focus on the term consequence instead of consumption, right? Because it might not be the fastest, right? I might be one of those low intellectual folks that might be victimized under your scope. Not saying that's your claim, but that's the example we've been proposed by you. I'm not the smartest, not the sharpest tool in the shed, but let's
I don't know
focus
where I
instead
proposed that.
on
That was a drive-by.
consequence. No, it was just an example you used.
What was an example I used?
Low intellect beings
Oh,
being
I thought you said
justifiably killed.
I said you would be low intellect if you didn't track or something. Okay, my bad. Go ahead.
No. You're okay. I'm only saying that because I want to instead change my trait, which would be now consequences. I'd like to explore that topic. I think it is
Sure.
morally justifiable to consume, animal meat, and you couldn't really plug that into a human because there would be consequences behind that
Wait,
sort of
wait, wait, wait,
behavior.
wait, wait, wait. When we plug in a trait or set of traits from an animal onto a human, we are holding equal that there would not be consequences, just like how there are not in our current world for killing animals. So that's granted.
There have been consequences to killing animals,
I'm
sure.
not asking. No. I'm not asking. No, that's not what I said. I didn't say there have been consequences to killing animals. I'm saying that when a trait or set of traits is plugged in from an animal to a human, we are not saying we are automatically granting that there would not be consequences for it, right? It's called held equal. It's a situation where you said, what if just these traits were plugged in? If you threw in the trait in question of, well, what if there were consequences? We're going to factor that out because then it's not that doesn't allow the thought experiment to go through if you were to say that.
Isn't that just a classic case of moving the goalpost?
What do you mean of moving the goalpost? If you said a trait was intelligence, right? That allows
Yeah, but
that
that's
serves
a
as a
complete
differentiating trait.
experiment.
Wait. Let's see.
Sure.
I'm trying to have to understand this. If you said the trait was intelligence, do that. That's just a hypo dodge.
Connection issue.
Oh,
I
looks like
understand
we're
now.
getting some. Oh, here we go. Okay, connection came back. Is we good now? Okay.
Can you hear me?
No, I can hear you. I think it was just the stream.
Okay. No worries. Okay, you know what? I gotta apologize to you. I don't think I really fully grasped the majority of what you had shared with me in terms of the name the trait. Um, I kind of came in, wanting to share why I believe it's okay. I do now kind of understand your thought experiment. Um, Let me propose something. Can we deviate from the thought experiment? I'm not a big proponent of um, thought experiments based off of what ifs as much as I am a
Yeah,
proponent
so
of
I
current
love that you said
reality.
that. I know I love that you said that because here's the thing.
Yeah,
The
sure.
the straw man that will typically happen with regards to hypotheticals, thought experiments, anything of the like, is that people say, "Oh, it's a what if, it's not currently true of the world." To be
Okay.
clear, the real world consequences of your view exists regardless of whether or not you answer the hypothetical. So say for example you thought that the differentiating traits between humans and animals such that it's okay to kill one and not the other were intelligence and species. That's going to be true regardless of whether or not you answer the question. That means that for all these animals that are getting their throats slit, getting raped, getting abused, getting murdered, everything like that, all that happening would not be okay by your own view if those traits were never answered to be acceptable or not. The thought experiment is just a tool to see whether or not you would actually be okay with it. Likely, I could answer that for you. You would think it would be crazy for you to think that mentally handicapped supermen are okay to have that happen towards. I mean, I'm
But
not going to
Supermen
insert your
aren't
view for
real.
you, but I doubt you would actually sign off on that, for example. What's
Well,
that?
I wouldn't sign off on it because I don't think people should get killed for their lack of intelligence, but less that as
And
much as
species.
there is no
It
Superman.
was a trait stack.
Um, okay, sure. But,
Okay,
Superman is where you derail
say that
me.
we altered.
Human?
Uh,
Just
have you
regular
ever?
Joe?
So tell me, do you to see how little you actually engage with hypotheticals in the real world? Like, do you ever
Okay.
watch Star Wars or Superman as a movie or
No,
any of these movies and say to your okay, maybe you don't have
never watched
imagination.
Star Wars.
That's why I haven't either, but I know of it, right? And one thing I know people wouldn't say is that when they watch entertainment, they wouldn't say that they don't engage with the logical consequences of what a movie pretends is true simply because it's not real, right? Like, there's a reason why things have an emotional impact on people or people engage with conditionals regardless of whether or not they know it's actually happening. It's because they say to themselves, man, if that were happening, if I was a person in that movie, I would or wouldn't be okay with that. But if you really want to be
Okay.
difficult about it just for the point to go through, we could just say, let's start from human DNA and say that it was slightly altered, right? If you said that it was technically was not human DNA anymore because it had like I don't know, 5% or 10%, or let's say it was like 90% cow species, but it subjectively looked like a human. So technically they were a different species and they definitely had less intelligence, right? The point that I was making earlier is regardless of whether or not you actually find it to be, or sorry, you ever answer that hypothetical, I doubt you would find it to be okay to kill and infinitely holocaust those beings.
I mean, that kind of comes off as an extremist point.
What's
Wouldn't you agree
extremist?
that moderation is important? Holocausting the being indefinitely for consumption sounds like an extremist point. I think moderation is not being regarded. Correct?
so I yes, sarcasm sold separately. I am so sorry that I didn't factor out that it would be okay as long as we put a cap on how many beings are raped, kidnapped, and tortured and slaughtered. Like
I don't see the
if
correlation
the
in
if the
rape
savior
and
to the position is
consumption.
supposed to just be that there's a limitation on how much you rape, I would love to see if you'd actually hold that to be true for a serial
I
rapist or
really
murderer.
struggle to find the
Hmm.
correlation between rape and meat consumption.
Well, it's what I'm analogizing that's true of those, right?
That that's a
So I'll explain what I mean
for your
since you don't seem
hold
to
on.
understand that.
I, I,
So
I
when a
just
cow is artificially inseminated, right? If a woman were to forcibly have sperm stuck down her vagina, that would be constituted as rape. Do we agree on that?
for humans, I
Yes.
definitely see that that's true.
Okay.
And in
So
fact
then
it
what
happens
trait or set
to a
of
lot of
traits
people.
is true of an animal which if true of a human would cause you to say that it's not rape instead?
Oh, okay, thank you. I think you have framed it in a way, but in just an incredibly volatile terminology. Rape, it's
Volatile.
horrible.
I
Yes,
literally
rape.
plugged
Rape
in the
is
concept.
incredibly
No,
volatile.
I challenge you logically to name a trait or set of traits that's true of an animal which if true of a human would cause you to
Volatility
not
doesn't
call it
have to
rape.
be unlogical.
What's that?
Volatility does not
That's
have
not
to
what I'm
be
saying.
illogical.
No. The trait or set of there have to be a trait or set of traits that differentiate two beings that cause you to say you wouldn't use the
No,
term
I
rape
hear
for
you.
an animal. So then
I
what's
hear
the
you.
trait?
Can we use a different trait,
No,
because I
what's the
don't want to be in
trait?
a position of defending
What trait or
rape.
set of traits are true of a cow, chicken, or pig that if they were true of a female human would cause you to not call it rape?
Okay, now we're differentiating genders from just humans. So
What?
this is become well, now you said of a human female
It's an
instead
example.
of just humans.
It's an
But it's
example.
it's a it's an example that I
It could be
struggle
true. It could
to
be true. It could be true of males as well. It could be true of males as well.
yeah,
You
it
so
can't. It's
it's
a
really
it's,
funny
a, it's
because
an example.
you said earlier that you struggle to understand hypotheticals really well. So when I zoomed in, especially on a certain point for you to understand, because a typical situation of somebody getting raped, we all know it happens more with females than males, is I gave that as an example
It
for you to
happens a lot.
conceptualize. I gave you
I just
an
don't want to
example
be
for you to
you. I
conceptualize, and
just
then you
don't
gave
want
me
to be in.
problems.
I just do not want to be positioned where I'm defending anything that has the terminology rape on my end, because
Right.
that's
So
not
then you
something
should
I'm
probably
for.
go vegan. But if you want to
Well,
say that
see,
you
but
don't agree,
but the
but that's
thing
not what you
is,
said,
the
right?
thing is,
Because you didn't agree with the terminology
human
of
rape
using
is
rape for.
incorrect,
What do you mean human
right?
rape is incorrect for what?
It's not something that should be done, right? You cannot go and
Right. So that
rape
begs the
human,
question: what trait or set of traits differentiate humans and animals such that you would say it's okay to do to an animal and not a human?
but we don't rape animals to
Descriptively, I'm asking
actually
you what
consume
trait or set of
them.
traits cause you to say that it is morally neutral or acceptable.
I don't want to say it's morally neutral or acceptable to rape an
You
animal
have
in
an
the sense
attitude
that,
that allows it.
but anything in regards to an animal being raped is not something I'm going to defend. If we can use a different terminology, that
Do
would be
you
better, because
disagree?
I don't.
Wait. Do you disagree? Do you disagree that artificial insemination is a necessary part of the process of buying dairy?
Um, I mean, I don't think it's necessary. You can tell me if it is or isn't.
It absolutely is. It absolutely is.
Okay,
You definitely want to educate yourself on that one, buddy, because it's very
because what
common knowledge.
it
It's very
it,
common
it
knowledge that
insemination does what?
cows don't produce milk by
Milk without
themselves.
being pregnant. Sure. Now, I
Well, it
don't
sounds
think
like you
you
were
need
actually
to.
very familiar with it. It's almost like you took the
Yeah,
words out of my mouth. You
well,
sure you don't remember conveniently when I started to remind you of it?
the thing is, I'm letting you, you know, behave in the way you'd like to behave, because that's your right, and
You're
I'm not
letting
gonna,
me.
throw it in your face.
Thank you. Thank
That's
you,
all I
Trump.
can do as myself, is throw it back at someone, but I'm not gonna do that. I have no control over how you react. I will, however,
That
mention
all
that.
doesn't engage with what I
That
asked you, which is
No,
if
I
this were in
understand,
the
but I'd like
if this
to
were in the
set my position, because
cow context,
I feel like
would
I
you
am
call it rape?
only able to reply within a mere sentence, while I do allow you to perform
Well, there's
paragraphs. If it's okay to provide
Brandolini's
my
law
own
says
stance,
that there is more work that has to be put
Rambling.
into there is more work that has to be put into disambiguating sophistry than creating it. And then
Okay.
every single time I disambiguate a point, I then have to repeat myself because one sentence in, as you like to just complain about, you already make another
Mhm.
mistake. So I'm gonna continue to cut you off and correct you if you continue to make mistakes.
Okay. So
But I'm also gonna press you on the
accurate?
question: would you call it rape in the cow context? Because that's what's relevant to the matter.
No,
You said you
I would not
right. So what
call it
trait or
rape.
set of traits
I
cause
think
you to
that
say that
the
it's not rape
appropriate way
in
to
the animal
moderate
context, but it
what
is rape in the human
I would
context? Do you have the trait? Or are you
so
scared?
I would believe that no, so I mean, I just can't find a trait. I would love to hear what
But it
kind of
exists.
options you provide, because so far I've heard
Well,
intelligence,
then you
I've
should be
heard genetics,
agnostic.
and I've
You should
heard
be
rape.
you should be agnostic on whether or not you would constitute it as
What does
rape at the
that have
very
to do with
least.
diet?
If you're this is a joke, right? Okay, you'd have to be
I
agnostic if you're
believe
not able to find
rape of an animal
if you can't find a differentiating
is
trait between two things. Let me give you an example. Okay? If you go inside of a room and you see something that looks like an apple, and then you have something under the plate in question, and somebody lifts it up, and they said, right next to that apple, there's something that looks identical to that apple. And you say, I don't want to say
Mhm.
that this is also an apple as well, because it's a different
I'll
color. One's
gladly
green and
call it an
one's red.
apple. I won't use the
But
term rape as
no,
part
but
of my
that's what I mean.
defense.
Well, the analogy is towards the use of the word rape. So you
I
denying that
know,
one
but
thing is an apple
I
because it's a
really
different
don't want to
color is
position
the
myself
same.
where I can
You
try to
denying that
convince
it's
someone
rape
that
because it's you denying that it's rape because it's a different color begs the question. There has to be something that differentiates it in some way, shape, or form, some trait or set of traits between one apple versus the other, or one being versus the other being. That you're scared to call it rape with regards to the cow, but you're not scared to do it with the human.
okay, because we have law to clearly define rape with humans. With
Okay, so if
animals,
it
that would
wasn't,
just be
if you didn't have the law to tell you that it was rape, would you still would you still call it rape?
if I didn't have the law to tell.
Not to teach it
I
to
guess,
you,
but
but
I
if the
guess
law
we
wasn't in
if we
agreement with
didn't
you,
have that, if we didn't have that, and we also didn't have the understanding of what just non-consent is, then I wouldn't be able to recognize it,
seems like
right?
that's
But
all that
because
that really matters is the concept of consent.
it's important to be able to consent. Animals cannot consent.
It seems like no, it seems like insofar as how we term the use of the word rape, lacking consent is all that's required. Not really the law, right? Because you just said if the law didn't say anything about it, the concept of lacking consent would be the only part that's relevant, right?
Let's explore that topic.
Is that yes or no?
Let's explore the topic.
You don't have an answer to that? You're agnostic?
I guess I wouldn't want to make myself look bad.
You wouldn't
Um,
want to say to a woman she's not being
I'll
raped
say
if
that
there's a country right now where it's legal to rape her. That's what you're saying. Like forcibly hold her down.
I would I would stand between any individual raping another individual.
So
I
you would
don't
call it
see
rape then, regardless of the law.
I
There you go. It wasn't
I
that
don't
hard. You've
I
never
don't
thought
think
about this
that
before, but you
animals
answered
can
it
apply
because all it takes
equally.
hold on, because all it takes is critical thought and logical consistency to see that the trait or set of traits that you're trying to name don't actually go through. So the law doesn't actually serve as a morally relevant trait that causes you to say that it's rape or not. So if that doesn't exist in the animal context, then
Well, it's more the
what's the trait?
reactions of the totality of the circumstance, right? You see a woman who is in danger, you see a man who is in danger at threat of being raped, you step
Descriptively
in.
you have a stronger visceral response. So if you are so let's just explore that. If you were to see a cow start to have a giant fist shoved down her vagina, would you constitute that as rape?
I would not.
Okay, so then what's the
It's an
trait
animal.
or set of traits that cause you to say that you would not, but you would for the human?
The fact that it doesn't have the ability, no, sorry, let's forget about abilities. The fact that it's just not capable of taking its own actions into its own hands. We're capable of deciding what others are faced with. So for the cow, unfortunately, its decisions are out of its realm of control. That's upon us.
Is that a point? Wait, let me make sure I
More
understand that.
specifically, allow me to
When you
specify
say
more. Allow me to specify
wait, I
more. Allow me to
when you
specify
say
more. Allow me to specify more specifically. More specifically, in relation to a domesticated animal, which is considered property,
yeah, so I
as
know that
opposed to
descriptively they're considered property.
undomesticated
That
and
doesn't
or
answer the question.
non-propertized creatures.
That doesn't answer the question.
I was specifying, so I couldn't hear your
No,
question.
that doesn't engage with what I was saying. Because here's what happened. I said what trait or set of traits differentiate the two. You said it was inability to be able to control its circumstances. And I was trying to figure out what that meant. You said something like domestic abuse. So does that mean might makes right? Or does that mean like they just currently don't have the law on their side? Like, is this a legal point or is this a
They're no,
physical
they're
point?
biologically incapable of controlling their circumstances.
What does it mean to be biologically incapable of?
The lack of opposable thumbs, being able to manipulate your accessibility.
Okay, so
Uh,
physically. That's what I asked. I
your,
said physically.
let's go with that.
Okay. So
I'd
any
love to hear your
human
point.
who biologically is incapable of physically defending themselves would be okay to take advantage of off that view.
In your hypothetical, not in the
Well,
real world.
wait. You say hypothetical. What do you mean? No, it's the logical consequences of your view. That's true right now. If the trait or set of traits that differentiate the two, such that it's okay to call it rape in one and not the other, or constitute it as rape, you wouldn't even take action, is just that they don't have a physical way to defend themselves. That's going to be true of any situation right now
Human.
for any human that's severely
However,
mentally handicapped. That's
however,
true
you
right
and
now.
I are not going to, however, you and I don't, I'm going to make an assumption that you don't consume meat. You already
Dead
know that I
animals.
do.
But that doesn't answer the
Animals.
question.
No, no, no. What I'm stating is that you and I would not do harm upon someone who is
Your
perceived
view
as less
justifies
than.
allowing people who are severely physically handicapped from being able to be being
Now,
defended
why does it
and
justify
questioned.
it? Now, why does it justify it?
Ask yourself. You're the one who named the trait. I said what trait or set of
I don't
traits
believe it
allow it to be
justifies it.
constituted as rape. Allow it to be constituted as rape in the animal context and not the human. You said it's them not being able to physically defend themselves. So if we plug that into a human, any human who's not able to physically defend themselves, it's going to have to logically follow that's true as well. You said that's not in the real world, but that's true of the real world. If that's your real position, that's what would follow.
I would love to see an example of how that is just a truth in the world besides
What do you mean a
nuances, right?
truth?
Because
Wait, what do you mean a truth in the world? It's called logically following. You should probably take a first order logic class to realize that when you plug in a certain variable, any statements which you plug into that have that variable entailed are going to follow from it.
applicable to the thought experiment.
It's of the real world. If it's true that the trait that you're mentioning is a physical incapability of defending themselves, right now, physically handicapped people who cannot defend themselves off of that view, if you're not being dishonest with me, it would logically follow. That's not a thought experiment. That's why do you think slavery or any other position would be justified? Not because it's a thought experiment that they thought blacks were inferior. It's because in the real world, their inferiority led to enslavement and other moral atrocities.
Sure, that doesn't directly relate to animal consumption. That is a genuine,
Well, it does
real,
insofar.
historical
No, it
aspect.
does. It
But
does.
hold
It
on,
does
I
insofar.
do
Wait, no,
want
no,
to
no,
make
no, no,
my
no, no, no,
point
no, no,
here.
no. It does insofar as what the trait that you named for constituting it as rape versus not rape. You just said that it would not be rape if they were severely physically handicapped. That happens in the real world. If that were to happen in the
A
real world,
physical,
that's not a
a
hypothetical.
physical
That's not a
handicap.
hypothetical. Your position really justifies that.
I'm sorry, but a physical
That's
handicap in
evil.
a human
That's
being is
hilarious.
not a one-to-one correlation between an animal's inability to have the same biological metrics as a human
Wait, I
being.
couldn't hear
Do
that.
you
A
disagree with
human
that?
what?
No worries. A human with handicaps does not have the same correlation as an animal that cannot have the same biological metrics as a human.
That just sounds like
Essentially,
jargon. You said
but
earlier the
a lot of
position was
what
not
you
being able
said
to
sounds like
have the
jargon,
ability
but
to
I'm not
defend
throwing that in your
themselves.
face. I feel like I might have finally said something of value, and I feel
Well,
like you
instead of
instantly
conceding the
shot it
point,
down.
no, well, no, instead of conceding the point that what you said justifies taking advantage of physically handicapped
But the
people,
problem here is
instead of
you
conceding
you are
that
correlating
position
a
and then
cow's. Hold
changing
on,
it, which is fine, you could do
allow
that.
me,
You could do
allow me.
that, but you have to
If you will
concede.
allow me, will you allow me?
To concede, yes.
No, no, no. Sorry, to make my next point.
Well, you got to concede. I mean, you literally said that the trait not being able
I'm
to
not
physically defend
switching off
yourself
of
was
the
a
topic.
was what caused it to be rape in one situation and not the other.
This is very black and white. Allow me to add some color to it. I'm not moving off the point.
Well,
We're
then
still
don't pick
working
a
on
position. Well, then
confusing terms.
don't pick a
But
position whose logical entailment is
I'm.
such to that.
Excuse me, if I may.
Can you recognize that that's a logical
This
consequence,
structure,
even
a
if you
debate
don't
has
actually
structure.
commit, even if you don't
If we can,
actually commit, even if you don't actually commit to the
I would
position?
love to hear. I would love to see the chat's
Can
opinions
you
on just
consider?
how much.
This is
Excuse
between
me,
us right now. This is between us
excuse
right
me.
now,
I
man. You don't
understand,
have to try to get
but
the
I would
chat into
really.
here. Don't worry about that.
No, no, no. What I'm having a hard time accepting is
Okay, so I'm just gonna mute you for a second. I'm just gonna reiterate again. You don't have to commit to the position, but you do need to concede that that is a logical consequence if you were to commit to the position. Do you understand now?
I cannot concede because it's logically infallible. My only issue currently before I'm able
Maybe
to.
don't pick a position that's logically infallible then. I mean,
Then
I
no, no,
assume you
no. I'm
mean that
sorry.
it's logically infallible
Your
because it's an absurd
your
view, right? You're
reasonability of it,
running. You're scared. I
your
know. It's a
ability to
problem. It's
reason.
sad. all the physically handicapped people that just get fucked. Damn.
Can I just say something?
Can you
I
concede?
I def can I may if you're able to convince me, right? But
Well, I already said enough to reflect your own view back onto you. Once again, can you concede that a logical consequence of the trait that you named, which is being physically handicapped to the point where you cannot defend yourself, justifies humans being raped?
problem right now is you're getting
Is that a
90% of
yes
the
or no?
microphone and I get 10% of
I
the
am
ability to
re
speak.
I am putting us back
May
on
I?
track. If you don't like being put back onto track, don't derail the conversation.
No, no, no. I'm not trying to derail. I can
You are because you
appreciate you
won't
bringing us
answer.
back on track. I can appreciate you bringing us back on
You're
track.
not because you
But
won't answer.
there's a
I
point
never.
I'd like to
Here's what I said. I
I'd,
never
I'd
said
like
that
to
you're committed to
explore
the position. If
something you
that's what you're
said.
scared of, just don't
No,
say that you commit to the position. I get that you were trying shit out. It didn't work. Throw shit at
if
the
I
wall.
if
Doesn't
I
stick.
ultimately
That's fine.
determine that I will not commit to the position, I will proudly tell you. There's a focal point.
But that's not the point. The point is whether or not you agree that the logical consequences of what you named lead to that. That's all.
But the way you framed it is incorrect. You mentioned
I
a
used your
cow
own
having hooves.
terminology.
No, but you framed it incorrectly. Using it doesn't mean that it wasn't framed differently. What I'm saying here is you mentioned that because I mentioned that the inability of control, right? Now that in your terminology was construed as, oh, the hooves of a cow.
No, no, no,
Right.
no, no, no,
Not
no, 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 no,
me
no, no.
saying
The last thing we spoke about when I last asked you whether or not you would constitute one situation as rape and even intervene was whether or not they had the physical capability to defend themselves. That's on stream.
right.
Everybody saw it. You want to talk about chat? They more than fucking saw that, and it's going to be on replay.
They also can see that I'm able to speak maybe 10% of the time during this conversation. But my
Which
point
wouldn't
being
happen if you
here,
didn't derail the conversation. So you have yourself to thank.
sure. What I'm trying to suggest here is
So
that
again, I'm going to give you another opportunity to answer whether or not
in
you
animals'
agree that the
inability to,
logical. You continue to cut me off, and you're going to get booted. Answer whether or not the logical consequences. This is going to be my last warning. That you agree that the logical consequences of what you named, instead of constantly trying to shift the goalpost onto something else, I only have so much patience for that. Okay? You clearly are bad faith. You want to show me that you're not? Last chance. Do you agree that the logical consequences from the view that you named when I reflected your view back at you was that you would have to say that physically human, handicapped people who cannot defend themselves, you would not constitute as rape off of the view that you named?
I disagree.
That's what you said.
Yeah, well, I disagree.
You
I
disagree that you
disagree
said it,
because
or you disagree
I
with the view?
disagree with your terminology of handicap. It doesn't
So
correlate.
now,
Um,
now you're pretending that you didn't understand. You didn't understand what it meant to be physically handicapped. I literally said to the
no,
same
no, no.
degree that it
in
happens with
animals,
the same
in
degree that you
animals,
would say. You said opposable thumbs and being able to stop the situation in question.
does not relate to a human's handicaptedness at
Yeah,
all.
it does. I literally said if it were the same.
You
I took
cannot
your
make it the same.
context.
An
What do you mean I can't
animal's
make it the same?
inability to have opposable thumbs does not correlate to a human's handicappedness. Okay, someone with
If the
cerebral
human in
palsy.
question, if the human in question had a handicap where they couldn't fight back, that was the trait.
No, the trait was the inability to control their selves. Now, what you did
Control
is say that,
themselves. No, you
well,
said to
right,
control the circumstances.
right. Okay,
What do
fine.
you mean, right?
But the problem here is that you are
Okay,
correlating that to a
so you're out, and that sophistry is not going to slide by. That you're trying to get me to lose steam because you don't have any sort of respect for logic. Uh, yeah, as Morales said, be honest, it follows. Right? Like when you got caught on it, you did not want to admit it. If you don't have logical consequences of trade, then you should go vegan. Right? Exactly. Um, Dandelion Gum. My opinion is that you don't understand the concession here. You essentially just said that raping humans is okay if they don't have the ability to fight themselves. Even Dandelion Gum sees it. Like, come on, dog. You're just so bad faith. And the thing is, you could see the entire time that he was trying to, like, debate, he was like building into it. Like he kept dancing with this like, oh, I'm gonna put on this really like good demeanor. Like I'm so respectful. I'm so nice. And then he just fucking sidesweeped that contextually by being like, well, I just need to explain something else. And he'd say something super crazy casually. Like, what the fuck was that? He was just like, oh yeah, I don't have I didn't say that. Oh no, I didn't do that. Like it just became gaslighting, you know. At some point, I'm fine with giving people a chance. You know, again, they can change their positions. They can. Thank you. Yeah. Some of the biggest problems I see is when people let debates go too far and they get taken advantage of. They don't clarify terms. They just want to let the person talk because they feel this like social guilt of like, oh my god, like that's true. Like they haven't talked in a while. Well, the truth doesn't care about how redundant somebody's voice sounds. The truth cares about who's derailing the conversation, who's staying on track for the conversation, who's trying to get off topic, who seems to be bad faith, who's not. I'm engaging with philosophy and logic here, and sophistry does not fucking slide.